The deck of the Sullivan Majesty hummed with life under a Miami night sky, its polished wood reflecting the glow of string lights strung along the rails. The air carried the salty tang of the Atlantic, mingling with a faint scent of expensive cologne and fruity cocktails. Emily Carter stood near the edge, her sneakers scuffing against the planks, a stark contrast to the heels and loafers of the well-dressed crowd milling around her. In her trembling hand, she clutched a gold wristband, its engraved initials, G's, catching the moonlight every time she shifted her grip. Her heart pounded like a drum solo at a rock concert. She'd spent months chasing this moment, and now it was here. She scanned the sea of faces, tan, laughing, carefree, looking for him. The man who'd swept her off her feet 6 months ago, only to vanish without a trace. The man who'd left her with more than just a memory. Her free hand drifted to her stomach, where the faint swell of triplets pressed against her faded denim jacket. She swallowed hard, nerves buzzing like a live wire. Then she saw him. Jack Sullivan stepped out from the shadow of a towering white canopy, his dark hair catching the breeze, his tailored blazer hugging shoulders she still remembered under her hands. He was chatting with a guy in a tux, all easy smiles and casual charm, like he owned the place, which technically he did. Sullivan Cruise Lines was his empire, and this ship was its crown jewel. Emily's breath hitched. He hadn't changed a bit since that night on the Sullivan Dream. Except now she knew who he really was. She took a step forward, then another, her sneakers silent against the chatter of the party. Her throat felt dry as sandpaper, but she couldn't back down now. Not after everything. She was 10 feet away when he turned, mid-laugh, and their eyes locked. The smile froze on his face, replaced by a flicker of something. Shock. Maybe recognition. For a split second, it was just them, the noise fading into a dull roar. Then a burly guy in a black suit stepped between them, one hand raised like a stop sign. "Ma'am, you can?" The bodyguard started, voice gruff. "Jack!" Emily's voice cut through, sharp and desperate. She dodged the guy's arm, closing the gap. "It's me. Emily, from the Sullivan Dream." Jack's brows shot up, his hazel eyes widening as he waved the bodyguard off. "Hold up, Mike. I got this." The man hesitated, then backed off, though his glare stayed glued to her. Jack took a step closer, lowering his voice. "Emily? What? What are you doing here?" She held up the wristband, her fingers shaking so bad it nearly slipped. "I've been looking for you everywhere, Jack. 6 months, and I finally tracked you down." She sucked in a breath, the words tumbling out before she could chicken out. "I'm pregnant, with triplets. They're yours." The air went still, like someone hit pause on the whole damn world. Jack's jaw dropped, just for a second, before he snapped it shut. His eyes darted to her stomach, then back to her face, searching for something. Truth maybe, or a punchline. The party kept swirling around them, oblivious, but Emily felt every second stretch like taffy. "Triplets?" he finally said, voice barely above a whisper. He ran a hand through his hair, messing it up in a way that made him look less like a billionaire and more like the guy she danced with under the stars. "You're serious? You think I'd make this up?" Her voice cracked, anger bubbling up. "I didn't even know who you were back then. Just some guy named Jake who ditched me after one night. Took me weeks to figure out EGA stood for Jack Sullivan, the guy who owns half the cruise ships in Florida." He flinched, glancing around like he was worried someone might overhear. "Okay, hold on. Let's not do this here." He grabbed her elbow gently, steering her toward a quieter corner near the lifeboats, where the hum of the ocean drowned out the party noise. The Miami skyline glittered in the distance, all sharp lights and soft shadows, but Emily barely noticed. Her focus was on him, The way his jaw tightened, the way he wouldn't quite meet her eyes. "Look," he said, letting go of her arm and shoving his hands in his pockets. "I remember you, okay? That night, it was real. But the triplets, how do I know you're not just after a payout? People try to pull stuff like this on me all the time." Emily's stomach dropped, heat rushing to her cheeks. "A payout?" She yanked the wristband out of her pocket and threw it at his feet, the metal clinking against the deck. "You left that behind, Jack. That night at the bar, after we danced. After you kissed me and promised we'd meet up the next day. I didn't ask for your money then, and I'm not here for it now. I'm here because you deserve to know. And those kids deserve a dad." Jack stared at the wristband, his face paling as he bent to pick it up. He turned it over in his hands, thumb brushing the G-J like it was a relic from another life. I lost this months ago," he muttered, almost to himself. His eyes flicked up to hers, softer now, but still guarded. "You kept it all this time?" "Yeah," she snapped, crossing her arms. "It's all I had left of you. That, and the 3 little surprises you didn't stick around to find out about." He exhaled hard, like he'd been punched in the gut. "Emily, I didn't ditch you on purpose. Something came up. Family stuff. I had to leave the ship early. I didn't think," he trailed off, shaking his head. "I didn't think it'd turn into this. Well, it did," she said, her voice trembling despite her best efforts to keep it steady. "I spent weeks puking my guts out, wondering why I felt so awful, until a doctor told me I'm carrying 3 babies. Your babies? And then I had to play detective just to find you, while you're out here living it up on yachts." Jack winced, rubbing the back of his neck. "I'm not living it up, trust me. My life's a damn circus most days." He glanced at the wristband again, then at her, his expression softening. "You really went through all that? Alone? Pretty much," she said, swallowing the lump in her throat. "So what now, Jack? You gonna run again? Or are we gonna figure this out?" He didn't answer right away. The wind picked up, tugging at his blazer and ruffling her hair as the ship rocked gently beneath them. She could see the gears turning in his head, the war between doubt and something else, guilt, maybe, or a flicker of the guy she'd met that night. Finally, he sighed. "I'm not running. Not this time. But I need a minute to wrap my head around this, okay? I'll call you. We'll talk, I promise." Emily narrowed her eyes. "I've heard that one before." "I mean it," he said, stepping closer, his voice low and firm. "Give me a day. I'll figure something out. Just don't disappear on me either." She studied him, the sharp lines of his face softened by the moonlight, the way his eyes held hers like they had 6 months ago. Part of her wanted to believe him. The other part, the part that had been burned, screamed at her to walk away, but she nodded anyway, too tired to fight anymore tonight. "Fine," she said. One day, Jack gave her a small, hesitant smile, then turned to head back to the party. Emily watched him go, her hands slipping back to her stomach, feeling the faint flutter of the lives growing inside her. The wristband was gone, back in his hands now, but she couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of something bigger. Something messy, scary, and maybe even beautiful. As the crowd swallowed him up, she leaned against the railing, the cool metal grounding her. The Miami lights twinkled like stars on the horizon, and for the first time in months, she let herself hope. Maybe he'd call. Maybe he wouldn't. Either way, she wasn't alone anymore. Not really. Hey, if you're loving this roller coaster so far, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment. Where are you watching from? Let's dive into how it all started. 6 months earlier, the Tampa Bay waterfront buzzed with excitement as the Sullivan Dream loomed against the sunset, its white hull gleaming like something out of a postcard. Emily Carter stood on the crowded pier, clutching a beat-up suitcase that had seen better days, her sneakers scuffing the concrete. The air smelled like fried shrimp from nearby food trucks, mixed with the briny bite of the Gulf. She couldn't believe she was here. Her, a broke bartender from a rundown apartment off Dale Mabry Highway, about to board a luxury cruise she'd never have afforded in a million years. It all started with a dumb luck win on a local radio contest. Wiffles' Dream Cruise giveaway. She'd called in on a whim during a slow shift, guessing the name of some obscure 80s song, and bam, next thing she knew, she was holding a free ticket. "You deserve a break, Em," her best friend Mia Torres had said, tossing her a borrowed sundress from her closet. Go live a little. So here she was, nerves jangling like loose change, staring up at a ship that screamed money. Money she didn't have. The pier was a circus, families hauling matching luggage, couples snapping selfies with the ship in the background, kids running wild with ice cream-stained shirts. Emily adjusted the straps of Mia's dress, a flowy yellow thing that felt too fancy for her, and joined the line, snaking toward the gangway. Her hands were clammy around the suitcase handle, but she kept her chin up. Life had been kicking her ass lately. Overdue rent, a job hunt going nowhere, a landlord who wouldn't fix the leaky sink. This ticket felt like the universe tossing her a bone. Stepping on board was like walking into a movie set. Crew members in crisp white uniforms handed out neon-colored drinks with little umbrellas, flashing smiles brighter than the Florida sun. "Welcome aboard, miss," one chirped, pressing a pineapple-scented cocktail into her hand. She mumbled a thanks, her cheeks warming as she took a sip, the rum hitting her tongue with a sweet burn. The lobby sparkled, marble floors, a chandelier dripping crystals, soft jazz floating from somewhere overhead. She'd only seen stuff like this on TV. Her cabin was nothing fancy. A single bed shoved against a wall, a porthole showing the endless shimmer of the Gulf. Barely enough room to turn around without bumping her suitcase. She unpacked her few things. A couple t-shirts, a pair of shorts, Maya's dress, and caught her reflection in the tiny mirror. Plain brown hair, tired eyes, a smattering of freckles. She wasn't glamorous like the women she'd passed in the hall, all sleek hair and designer bags. But screw it. This was her shot at something good. By nightfall, the ship kicked into high gear with its first big event, a Hawaiian-themed party on the main deck. Steel drums thumped a lively beat, the DJs spinning tropical remixes that had the crowd swaying. Lanterns cast a warm glow over tables piled with lace and trays of coconut shrimp. Emily lingered near the edge, feeling out of place in Mia's dress, her arms crossed tight. Everyone else seemed to have a crew. Friends laughing, couples twirling. She was just her. And the music hooked her. A bouncy rhythm she couldn't resist. She closed her eyes, letting her hips sway a little, the beat washing away her awkwardness. That's when she heard him. "Mind if I steal a dance?" She spun around, nearly tripping over her own feet. And there he was. Tall, dark hair tousled by the breeze, eyes bright with a mix of mischief and curiosity. He wore a simple linen shirt, sleeves rolled up, no tie, nothing flashy. But something about him stood out. Maybe it was the easy way he held himself, like he belonged anywhere. Sure," she stammered, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "I'm not much of a dancer, though." "Neither am I," he grinned, offering his hand. "Let's fake it together." He said his name was Jake, and that was all it took. They hit the dance floor, his steps smooth but not showy, guiding her without making her feel clumsy. The crowd blurred around them. Flashing lights, swirling skirts, the clink of glasses. He spun her once, laughing when she wobbled, and she couldn't help but laugh too. It felt good, like shedding a heavy coat she'd been lugging around too long. "So, Jake," she said as the music slowed, their swaying turning lazy. "What's your deal? You do this cruise thing a lot?" Nah, he shrugged, his hand warm on her waist. I don't get nights like this often. Too many people counting on me back home. Sounds rough, she said, tilting her head. What do you do? Travel a lot, he dodged, that grin flickering back. What about you? How'd a Tampa girl end up here? Radio contest, she admitted, cheeks flushing. Dumb luck, I guess. Lucky's good, he said, his voice softening. You deserve it. They slipped away from the chaos after a while, finding a quiet spot by the railing. The moon hung low, a fat pearl over the water, its reflection dancing on the waves. They leaned close, shoulders brushing, swapping stories about favorite bands. Hers was Fleetwood Mac, his Springsteen, and laughing over a guy they'd seen wipe out trying to hula. At one point, she tucked a stray hair behind her ear, and he reached out, his fingers brushing her cheek. You're pretty when you smile, he said, low and honest. Her stomach flipped. You're not so bad yourself. The space between them shrank, and then his lips were on hers, soft, tentative, tasting faintly of rum. It wasn't fireworks or anything cheesy like that. It was better, real, warm like a promise. When they pulled back, his eyes held hers, and she felt seen in a way she hadn't in forever. Breakfast tomorrow? He asked, brushing her hand with his. There's this spot on the ship with killer pancakes. Deal, she grinned, her heart doing cartwheels. But morning came, and he was gone. She woke early, buzzing with anticipation, and headed to the breakfast hall, a sprawling room of white tablecloths and clinking silverware. No Jay. She checked the pool deck, the lounge where they danced, even asked the bartender, Tom, a lanky guy with a sunburned nose. Tall guy, dark hair, charming smile. She described, hopeful. Tom shrugged. Lots of guys like that around here. But, hang on. He ducked behind the bar and pulled out a gold wristband, etched with yours. This yours. Found it last night. Her heart sank as she took it, the metal cool against her skin. No, it's his. She spent the rest of the day searching, hallways, decks, anywhere he might have gone. Nothing. By the time the ship docked back in Tampa, she was a mess, clutching that wristband like a lifeline. The magic of the night before felt like a cruel joke, leaving her hollow as she dragged her suitcase home. Back in her cramped apartment, the AC rattling like it was on its last legs, she sank onto the couch. The wristband glinted in her palm, mocking her. Who the hell was? Jays! Why had he vanish? She tossed it onto the coffee table, tears pricking her eyes. She didn't know it yet, but that night had planted a seed, one that had grown into something wild, something she'd never see coming. Emily Carter's tiny Tampa apartment smelled like burnt toast and desperation. It was a sticky Thursday morning in late summer, the kind where the humidity clung to everything and the ancient window AC groaned like it was begging for mercy. She knelt on the bathroom floor, the cool tiles pressing into her knees, staring at 3 pregnancy tests lined up on the sink, all positive. Her stomach churned, not from the nausea that had been plaguing her for weeks, but from the sheer panic crashing over her like a Gulf Coast wave. She chalked up the puking to stress at first. The cruise had been a high she couldn't shake, followed by a low when Jake ghosted her. Then came the endless shifts at the bar, dodging handsy customers for tips that barely covered rent. But when the dizziness hit, and her jeans started feeling tight, she couldn't ignore it anymore. Her neighbor Sarah Nguyen, a no-nonsense paralegal with a knack for cutting through bullshit, had dragged her to the dollar store for the tests. Better know now than later, Sarah had said, tossing the boxes into her cart like they were groceries. Now, clutching the edge of the sink, Emily whispered, triplets, holy crap. The doctor at the free clinic yesterday had confirmed it. 3 little heartbeats flickering on the ultrasound screen. She'd nearly fainted right there, the paper gown crinkling as she gripped the table. 3 babies. Alone. On a bartender's paycheck, she didn't even have a car that didn't stall half the time. Sarah burst through the bathroom door, her flip-flops slapping the linoleum. "Well, what's the verdict?" Emily held up the tests, her hands shaking. 3. I'm having 3. Sarah's jaw dropped. Then she let out a low whistle. "Damn, girl. That cruise guy really left you a parting gift, huh?" She sank onto the edge of the tub, her dark ponytail swinging. "You gotta find him. And those kids deserve a dad. And you deserve some help. I don't even know his last name." Emily groaned, burying her face in her hands. "All I've got is Jake and this." She fished the gold wristband from her pocket, the JJ glinting under the flickering fluorescent light. "He said he traveled a lot. That's it." Sarah snatched the wristband, turning it over. "Yes, okay. Detective mode on. You said he seemed comfortable on that ship, right? Like he knew his way around?" "Yeah," Emily nodded, wiping her eyes. "Too comfortable now that I think about it." Sarah grabbed Emily's ancient laptop from the coffee table, plopping onto the couch. "Let's Google Jay's Cruise Tampa. Maybe he's some hotshot who works for Sullivan Cruise Lines." Emily perched beside her, hope flickering despite the dread gnawing at her gut. They scrolled through pages, ship schedules, cheesy promo pics of smiling passengers, until Sarah froze. "Wait! Jack Sullivan! Cruise Lines! Jason's..." "Holy crap, Em! Look at this!" She tilted the screen, showing a grainy article photo of a guy in a suit. Dark hair, sharp jaw, no clear face shot, but the vibe was unmistakable. Emily's heart thudded. I think he said his name was Jake, but rich guys lie about dumb stuff all the time," Sarah said, already typing again. "Says here he's based in Miami. Private as hell, hates the spotlight. Bingo, Miami." 3 hours away. Emily's mind raced. What do I do? Call him? Show up at his office like some crazy ex? "You march your ass down there and tell him," Sarah said, slamming the laptop shut. "He doesn't get to waltz off into the sunset while you're puking up triplets." 2 days later, Emily stood outside the Sullivan Cruise Line's headquarters in downtown Miami, the glass tower gleaming under a brutal sun. She'd borrowed Sarah's beat-up Honda, the AC busted, and spent the drive rehearsing what to say. Now, in a wrinkled t-shirt and jeans stretched tight over her barely there bump, she felt like a fish out of water. Suits hustled past her, briefcases swinging while she clutched her purse like a shield. Inside, the lobby was all marble and money, the air cool and scented with something fancy she couldn't place. She approached the reception desk, where a woman with a perfect blonde bob barely glanced up. "Hi, I need to see Jack Sullivan," Emily said, her voice wobbling. The woman's brow arched. "Do you have an appointment?" "No, but it's urgent. Personal stuff." A tight smile. "Mr. Sullivan doesn't take walk-ins. You can leave a message with PR." She slid a business card across the counter like it was a dismissal. Emily's cheeks burned. "I've tried emails, calls. Nothing gets through." "Please." The receptionist sighed, tapping something into her computer. "I'll pass it along." No promises. Defeated, Emily slumped into a leather chair by the elevators, watching the corporate world spin around her. She stayed an hour hoping, but no one came. Back in Tampa, she kept trying. Emails to every Sullivan address she could find. Calls that hit voicemail hell. Nothing. Then came the gala. She'd read online about a charity event Jack might attend at the Miami Beach Convention Center. Desperate, she hitched a ride with Sarah, wearing a thrift store black dress that pinched her sides. The place was a zoo, flashing cameras, women in gowns, men in tuxes sipping champagne. She slipped in through a side door, heart hammering, scanning for him. She spotted him near a fountain, shaking hands with some old guy in a bow tie. Same dark hair, same easy charm. She started toward him, but a hand clamped her arm. A security guard, face like stone. "Ma'am, invitation? I just need to... out," he barked, dragging her toward the exit. She twisted, catching Jack's eye for a split second. He froze, recognition flashing, before the crowd swallowed him. She was dumped on the sidewalk, humiliated, tears stinging as the gala lights faded behind her. Back home, she was pacing her living room, the wristband digging into her palm, when Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from a friend who knew someone at Sullivan. "Got a lead," Sarah said, reading aloud. "Guy named Daniel Brooks, Jack's assistant, might help. He's at the gala aftermath." Emily called the number Sarah dug up, her voice shaking. "Daniel, I'm Emily Carter. I met Jack on the Sullivan Dream. I need to talk to him. It's urgent." A pause. "Look, lady." Daniel's voice was low, cautious. "People lie about Jack all the time. Paternity scams, you name it. Why should I believe you?" "Because I've got his wristband," she snapped. "Gold, with J's on it. He left it that night. And I'm pregnant. Triplets. I'm not after his cash, I just need him to know." Another pause. Longer. "Okay," he said finally. "I'll pass it on. But don't hold your breath. He's got walls higher than this building." She hung up, sinking onto the couch, exhaustion clawing at her. Then, late that night, a creak at her door made her jump. A plain envelope slid underneath, no name, no stamp. She tore it open, her breath catching at the typed words. "Drop this or you'll regret it." Her hands shook as she stared at it, the room spinning. Someone knew. Someone was watching. She pressed a hand to her stomach, feeling those 3 little lives, and clenched her jaw. No way in hell was she backing down. Not from Jack. Not from whoever this was, but the fear settled in her bones like damp rot. And she wondered just how deep this rabbit hole went. Can Emily break through Jack's walls? Hit subscribe and tell me what you think in the comments. Things are about to get wild. Godin fordila. Fon fortego. PDC sibigungon. When the trombone T 617 and Emma Varsode de Kondoong 1.8 TTA van Naidin Ra, Miami va Tampa Florida, Tiplung vago besien genotu. Fat hin beti en korn tai dirdi njo. Fa di. Vagna tau tu. Chuade. Len. Kao tau tau yishait. Song Geji Dao Van Fong Ge Dai Dogui Seng Fodi Mio Tichitit Va Hani Towi Di Nien John Jang Ka Dia Gai Kyo Geo Leo Ye Kai Ke King Kyo. The knock on Emily Carter's Tampa apartment door came late. The kind of late where the streetlights buzzed louder than the crickets. She froze mid-pace, her bare feet sticking to the worn linoleum. The threatening letter still crumpled on the coffee table. It had been 2 days since that creepy envelope slid under her door, and every creak in the hallway had her jumping like a cat on a hot tin roof. She grabbed a kitchen knife, dull but better than nothing, and crept to the peephole. Jack Sullivan stood there, alone, his tailored coat looking out of place against the peeling paint of her building. His hair was a mess, like he'd been running his hands through it all day, and his eyes darted down the empty corridor before settling on the door. Emily's heart thudded. She hadn't seen him since that night, on the Sullivan Majesty when she'd thrown his wristband at his feet and demanded answers. She cracked the door, knife still in hand. "What the hell are you doing here?" Jack raised his hands, palms out. "Whoa, easy. I come in peace. Can I come in? We need to talk. Alone. No suits hovering." She studied him, the shadows under his eyes, the way he shifted like he was nervous. Against her better judgment, she stepped back, letting him in. The door clicked shut, and her tiny living room felt even smaller with him in it. 6 feet of Miami money standing next to her thrift store couch and chipped coffee table. He glanced around, not judging, just taking it in. Then his eyes landed on the letter. "Something happened, didn't it?" he asked, voice low. Emily tossed the knife onto the counter and crossed her arms. "Yeah, you could say that. Someone's been threatening me to drop this." "Drop you? Guess your fancy life comes with some real charming friends." He picked up the letter, scanning it fast, his jaw tightening. "Son of a bitch! Who sent this?" "No clue." She shrugged, her voice sharp. "Could be anyone who doesn't want me sniffing around your perfect little empire. I've been getting the cold shoulder from your people for weeks. Emails ignored, calls dodged, kicked out of your gala like trash. And now this." Jack cursed under his breath, setting the letter down like it burned him. "I'm sorry, Emily. I didn't know it had gotten this bad." He rubbed the back of his neck, pacing a tight circle. "I've been digging, had a pie check you out. Your story, your life, all of it. I had to be sure you weren't..." "Weren't what?" she snapped, heat rising in her chest. "Some gold digger trying to scam you? That's what you thought, huh? Easier than believing the girl you ditched is carrying your kids?" He stopped, meeting her glare. "I know. I screwed up. My life's a minefield. People lie to me every day, try to bleed me dry. I got paranoid. But the pie came back clean. You're real. The cruise, the pregnancy. Everything lines up. I believe you." Her throat tightened, anger mixing with a flicker of relief. "Great, so now what? You swoop in like some hero? Or do I keep dodging creepy letters and your goons?" "I'm cleaning house," he said, his tone hardening. "Whoever's pulling this crap, threatening you, stonewalling you, they're done. I've got suspicions, and I'm not letting it slide." He stepped closer, his voice dropping. "You're pregnant with my kids, Emily. Triplets. I'm not running again, I promise." She wanted to believe him, but the scars from 6 months of silence stung too deep. Before she could answer, his phone buzzed in his pocket. He fished it out, frowning at the screen. "It's Daniel, my assistant. I gotta take this." He stepped toward the window, the Tampa skyline a faint glow beyond the grimy glass. "Yeah. Dan, what's up?" His face darkened, his free hand clenching. "What? When? How bad is it? A pause, then? Get the board together. I'll be the..." He hung up, turning to her, pale as a ghost. "What's wrong?" Emily asked, dread pooling in her gut. "One of my top investors just bailed," he said, voice tight. "Someone leaked fake shipping contracts. Fraud. Big time. It's all over the news. If this blows up, it could tank everything I built." He swallowed hard. "And if they tie it to us, to the triplets, it'll be a feeding frenzy." Emily's head spun. "You think this is connected to the letter?" "Maybe," he said, shoving the phone back in his pocket. "Someone's playing dirty, and I've got a hunch who. Richard Malone, my dad's old advisor. He's been itching to take me down since I took over." She grabbed her purse, resolve hardened. "Then let's go. If he's behind this, we confront him together." Jack hesitated, then nodded. "All right, but it's gonna get ugly." The drive to Miami was a blur, the Honda's rattling engine no match for the tension crackling between them. By the time they hit Sullivan Cruise Line's headquarters, the underground lot was crawling with black SUVs, security probably. Inside, the boardroom buzzed like a kicked hive, suits whispering over stacks of papers. Richard Malone paced at the far end, a wiry guy with gray hair and a smirk that screamed snake. He froze when Jack stormed in, Emily at his side. "Jack," Richard started, voice smooth as us oil. "We need answers. These fraud claims." "Cut the crap, Richard," Jack barked, slamming a folder onto the table. Papers fanned out. Emails, signatures, dates. "These prove the fake contracts came from a shell company you set up. You've been forging deals to tank us, haven't you?" The room went dead quiet. Richard's smirk faltered. "That's ridiculous. You've got no proof." "I've got plenty," Jack cut in, voice like steel. "And I know you've been threatening Emily too, trying to keep me distracted while you stab me in the back. You forced me to doubt her, to push away my own kids, all for your damn power grab." Emily stepped forward, arms crossed over her stomach. "He's right. I've got a letter at home that says, 'Drop it or else.'" Sound familiar? Richard's eyes narrowed, darting around for support, but the board was shifting. Murmurs, sideways glances. An older guy with a beard stood. "We'll investigate this, Jack." "If it's true, Malone's out." Security moved in, grabbing Richard's arms. "This is a setup," he yelled, thrashing as they hauled him out. "You'll regret this, Sullivan!" His shouts echoed down the hall, leaving a stunned silence in their wake. Jack exhaled, running a hand through his hair. "That's one down," he muttered, turning to Emily. "You okay?" She nodded, adrenaline still pumping. "Yeah, but..." Her phone rang, shrill and urgent. She fumbled it out, seeing Tampa General Hospital on the screen. Her stomach dropped. "Hello? Ines? Carter?" It was Dr. Lisa Harper, her OB-GYN, voice tight. "We need you here now." "Your last checkup flagged something with the triplets. Possible growth issues. It's urgent." Emily's knees buckled. Jack caught her arm, his face paling. "What's wrong?" "Your babies," she whispered, tears pricking her eyes. "Something's wrong." He didn't hesitate. "We're going. Now." He grabbed her hand, pulling her toward the door. The boardroom chaos fading behind them. The scandal, Richard, the company. None of it mattered anymore. All she could hear was her own heartbeat, pounding out a prayer. Please let them be okay. Will the babies be okay? Subscribe now and drop a comment. We're racing to the finish line. The fluorescent lights of Tampa General Hospital buzzed overhead, casting a harsh glow over the maternity wing's linoleum floors. Emily Carter gripped Jack Sullivan's hand as they hurried down the corridor, her sneakers squeaking with every step. Her heart hammered like a jackrabbit's, drowning out the chatter of nurses and the distant beep of machines. The call from Dr. Lisa Harper had flipped her world upside down. Something about the triplets, growth issues, urgent. She couldn't lose them. Not after everything. Jack's jaw was tight, his free hand clenched into a fist. But he kept pace beside her, a steady anchor in the storm. They're gonna be fine, he said, voice rough but firm. We're here now, she nodded, too choked up to speak, clinging to his words like a lifeline. A nurse met them at the ultrasound room, her smile gentle but practiced. Right this way, Miss Carter. She led them in, where Dr. Harper waited, her white coat crisp against the dim walls. The room smelled like antiseptic and cold metal, the ultrasound machine humming softly in the corner. Emily climbed onto the table, the paper crinkling under her as she lay back. Her hands shook, hovering over her stomach where the triplets, her little miracles, were tucked away. Jack stood close, his hand brushing her shoulder, warm and soft. Dr. Harper rolled the probe over her belly, the gel cold against her skin, and the screen flickered to life. 3 tiny shapes appeared, blurry, but there. Their heartbeats pulsing like faint drum rolls. Emily held her breath, eyes locked on the screen. Dr. Harper's brow furrowed as she adjusted the probe, muttering measurements under her breath. Every second stretched into forever, the silence thick enough to choke on. Then the doctor sighed. A good sigh. Emily realized, her chest loosening. "False alarm," Dr. Harper said, a small smile breaking through. One of the techs flagged restricted growth, but within normal range. Fluid levels are fine, heartbeat strong. We'll keep monitoring, but they're okay for now. Emily's head dropped back, a sob escaping before she could stop it. Oh, thank God. Tears spilled hot down her cheeks, relief crashing over her like a wave. Jack's hand tightened on her shoulder, and she heard him let out a shaky breath, like he'd been holding it the whole time. "You're sure?" he asked, voice thick. "They're really okay?" "Positive," Dr. Harper nodded, wiping the gel off Emily's stomach. "Just take it easy, Miss Carter. Prenatal vitamins, rest, no stress. You've got 3 fighters in there." Emily laughed through her tears, wiping her face with her sleeve. "No stress? Yeah, right." Jack chuckled, a low, ragged sound, and leaned down, pressing his forehead to hers. "We got this, Em. They're tough, like their mom." She grabbed his hand, squeezing hard, and for the first time in months, she felt like she wasn't alone. Dr. Harper slipped out, giving them a moment, and Emily sat up, pulling Jack into a hug, his arms wrapped around her, strong and real, and she let herself cry, big, messy sobs she'd been holding back too long. "I thought I'd lose them," she whispered into his shirt. "You didn't," he murmured, his voice breaking. "And you won't." "I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." She pulled back, searching his eyes. "You mean that?" "Every word," he said, brushing a tear off her cheek. "I've been an idiot, but I'm done running. You them. You're my family now." Her chest ached with something soft and fierce. Hope? Maybe love. She nodded, too overwhelmed to say more, and they left the hospital hand in hand, the late afternoon sun painting Tampa gold. 6 months later, the air off Key West smelled like salt and freedom. The Sullivan Star, a small yacht Jack had insisted on borrowing from his fleet, rocked gently on the turquoise waves. Emily leaned against the railing, her sundress fluttering in the breeze, her belly now a full, round curve under the fabric. The triplets kicked like they were throwing a party in there, and she grinned, resting a hand where the flutters danced. Jack stepped up beside her, balancing a stroller where 3 tiny bundles slept. Ella, Mason, and Lily, born 2 weeks ago, all wrinkled and perfect. He'd been there for every second of it. The delivery room chaos, the first cries, the sleepless nights since. Now, under the Florida sun, he looked lighter. The weight of his empire's mess finally lifting. The scandal with Richard Malone had blown over fast. Jack's quick moves, firing Richard, pressing charges, going public with the truth, had saved Sullivan Cruise Lines from the edge. The press had sniffed around the triplets story, but Jack shut it down hard, standing by Emily in every interview. "She's not a headline," he'd told reporters, arm around her. "She's my partner." He convinced her to move into his Miami condo. More space, better security than her Tampa shoebox. She'd balked at first, but the practicality won her over. And now their mornings were herbal tea, caffeine was off the table, and quiet talks about baby names. They still bickered, her stubborn streak clashing with his control freak side. But every fight ended with them figuring it out together. Today was his idea. A day trip to shake off the chaos. Fresh air, calm seas, he'd said, and she'd agreed, smiling at the thought of a new start on a boat. The Sullivan Star purred along, the horizon stretching endless and blue, gulls squawking overhead. Jack set the stroller down and pulled the gold wristband from his pocket, the J's catching the sunlight. "Thought this belonged here," he said, placing it beside the stroller, a little piece of where it all began. Emily laughed, leaning into him. "Crazy how far we've come, huh?" "From me chasing you down to this?" "Yeah," he said, wrapping an arm around her. "Took a lot of hell to get here." That night on the Sullivan Dream, I couldn't explain it then, but I felt something, like I could breathe for once. Then my dad's stroke hit, and I let fear screw it all up. But I never forgot you. She rested her head on his shoulder, the warmth of him seeping into her. "I didn't forget you either. Even when I wanted to." He turned, cupping her face with both hands, his eyes soft but steady. "I love you, Em. Took me too damn long to say it, but I do. We've got a wild road ahead with these three, but I'm all in." Her throat tightened, tears prickling again, happy ones this time. "I love you too," she whispered, the words tasting like sunshine and salt. She stretched up, kissing him slow and sure, the world fading to just them and the waves. "Dada!" a tiny voice squeaked from the stroller. Ella, wide awake, waving a chubby fist. Jack laughed, scooping her up. "Already bossing me around, huh?" He bounced her gently, grinning at Emily. "Think we've got our hands full?" "Oh, you have no idea," she teased, brushing Lily's cheek as she stirred. Mason slept on, oblivious, and Emily felt her heart swell, big enough to hold all of them. They stood there, the sun dipping low, painting the sky in pinks and oranges. The yacht hummed beneath them, a steady rhythm tying their past to this moment. They'd torn through doubt, fear, and chaos to build something real, messy, beautiful, theirs. Emily leaned into Jack, the triplets between them, and knew this was it. A family forged from a wild twist of fate, strong enough to weather anything. From a wild cruise to a family of 5. What a ride. Subscribe and let me know your favorite part in the comments. See you in the next story.